Principles of sports nutrition.
I think the number one reason why athletes use recreational drugs is the same reason they like to play sports. They like to have fun. And there is this myth that still permeates a wide sector of society. And the myth is that using recreational drugs leads to devastation and a ruinous life and is destructive on every possible level you can imagine. And the opposite of that, in fact, is true. Now, great athletes worldwide use a whole variety of recreational drugs. And the reason they do is because they like to relax. Depending upon the substance and how much you use and when you take it and where you're at when you take it and who you're with when you use it. There's a whole variety of variables that relate to the use of recreational drugs. And of course, in this category, we're going to include nicotine, tobacco, caffeine, coffee, cannabis, cocaine, LSD, mushrooms, opium, you name it. Just keep adding to the list. Now, everywhere you're going to find people that have no control, or let's say they have no apparent control, and they lose it, and they end up on Skid Row. Now, that is a tiny sliver, a tiny, minute, little percentage, the most minute fraction of individuals that use recreational drugs. Athletes use drugs to enhance their life, to expand their consciousness, to stimulate, to hang out with their friends, to go to a movie, to swim in the lake, to go surfing in Hawaii, to go kite flying. You name it. You can use substances to enhance the experience. You can sit around with your friends and shoot the shit. Music. What about music? Who out there has gone to a concert and smoked a joint and felt the full amplification of the sound and the harmonics in their mind? I mean, this is how I was raised in my generation. Drugs were not something that losers did. Drugs, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, whatever they are, whatever you're thinking of in your head, they can be used in the context of fair play. They don't have to destroy anybody, and for the most part, they don't. Now, certainly some people get into trouble, and athletes who use steroids often get into drugs like cocaine and abuse them, or alcohol, which is by far more commonly abused. Ever heard of alcoholism? Do you know how many people that destroys? So we're finally reaching towards a state of no prohibition, because prohibition creates crime, it creates murder, and it feeds an industry that requires prohibition to exist. So you get rid of prohibition, you get rid of that industry, and then crime goes down, 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 and then because of education, because of common sense, and because of reality, and because we've got Switzerland and Portugal and different states in the United States moving towards a state of zero prohibition, we can see what is obvious. And that is legalizing drugs does not increase their use. What it does is it increases the quality of the substance, so there's no more death and damage caused by using street drugs that are contaminated. It's just straight up obvious that a person, whether they want to or not, can enhance their life whether they want to or not with a whole variety of substances from nature. Mushrooms, psilocybin, opium, cocaine is from a leaf in Peru. I've been to Bolivia, I've been to Peru, I've seen it there, I've seen them make it. It's got a vast history of application, both medical and recreational. I don't know if it's possible to find God on drugs, but it is certainly possible to have a hell of a good time. In the same way, when you play your sport, when you play one-on-one basketball, when you compete in a sport, in the Olympics, if you are a soccer player at the highest level, you can reinforce your existence in the same way that you can eat a fantastic whole food meal and really feel the pleasure of that meal. You can do the same thing with wine, with mead, with natural ale. You can use a very high quality clean cannabis and have just an extremely pleasurable experience that has absolutely nothing to do with substance abuse and everything to do with substance use. So the fact that these substances are even relegated or categorized as drugs is, in my opinion, ridiculous. Why don't we call avocados drugs? Because they can change portions of your brain. They can affect your blood sugar. They can affect hormones and neurotransmitters and chemicals. The fact that we treat people who use drugs as criminals is insane. And let's just establish this one fact, that athletes who come to terms with themselves and their sports and the effects of training and hard work are entitled to enjoy themselves in whatever manner of pleasure they so desire, provided, of course, in the words of John Stuart Mill, who wrote the fantastic book on liberty, that you don't get in the way of other people when you do what it is that you want to do. So you're sovereign and you're an individual and you're above the state with this regard. You can enjoy yourself and even abuse yourself. But a smart athlete doesn't want to abuse themselves. They don't want to destroy themselves. They want to stay well. They want to compete. They want to have fun. And so principally I would say that that's the primary driving force why athletes use recreational drugs. They want to have fun. They want to enhance their sexual pleasure. I mean, if you dig into this and see the history and the application of recreational drugs throughout every known society in the history of the world, you'll realize that the drugs themselves have nothing to do with what we perceive as abuse. It is the people themselves and their state of mind and their emptiness and their lack of happiness and their lack of objective ambition. That is the issue. The substance that anyone uses is only the effect. What's driving the cause? That's the issue. And so happy athletes use recreational drugs and happy athletes don't use recreational drugs. The fact is moot. It's irrelevant. We should put it to bed. And finally, eventually, one day, we will have and live in a society that respects the individual freedom, the constitution of each person to fulfill their own destiny in the way that they so choose and desire.